Does season 2 of Devil May Cry set right what once people thought went wrong? Let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's Netflix original series review of Devil May Cry Season 2, a new season by Studio Mir and Shankar. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what was quite surprising for season 1 that actually shocked me was how much people disliked it. I get it. It wasn't like as faithful as it could be to the Devil May Cry series, but I didn't realize it was going to be that hated, to be fairly honest, which is fine. You know, people don't have to like it. You know, they don't have to agree with me. That's fine. I gave it a 9 because I really liked it. I like the whole White Rabbit and stuff like that. But I hope and pray season 2 is much more universally liked, because this one actually continues the first season's arc, but also it kind of hits into the trajectory of the whole idea of what Devil May Cry represents. And this season follows Virgil as basically under the guise of King Mundus. The story arc has changed, so he's no longer brainwashed. He's actually been kind of a pupil of King Mundus, or Lord Mundus, however you want to call him. And in this season, Lady is basically trying to stop Virgil basically from getting this amulet to allow King Mundus into Earth. And the process, you know, Dante has to stop him. You know, of course, we found out, if you have seen the season 1 finale, you know what happens to Dante. Of course, we have Baines basically trying to, as the vice president, basically controlling Hopper, the president, and then it leads into the Ouroboros Corporation. And that's kind of pretty much what season 2 is trying, I assume what Shankar and Studio Mir are trying to do is rectify the issues that they had with the first season, even though Shankar has been a little kind of despondent when it comes to people's complaints. And this introduces the main baddies of Arius and, of course, King Mundus. And it leads into basically the battle for the soul of Earth, you know, with Virgil and, of course, Dante and stuff like that. And once again, it brings in characters from the first season like Lady and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what season 2 is doing. It's basically trying to, two sides trying to take over the thing that is called Earth. But it leads heavily into the lore of Devil May Cry in a lot of respects. So with that said, I didn't want to go into too many details because I do know people want to see this second season, the people that liked it. Some people were not going to come back to it, which is perfectly fine because they hated the first season so much. But I wanted to at least give the second season a chance because I liked the first season so much, because I wanted to see what they would do and how they would handle Mundus and stuff like that, and how they would handle Arius and Baines and Barnes and stuff like that, and how they would handle Lady and Dante, because Dante was a sticking point for a lot of people. He was, you know, too goofy, and, you know, Virgil and stuff like that, you know, bring him as a main character. And what I will say is Shankar may have listened to us as, you know, fans and stuff like that, or listened to people as fans, because my personal opinion for this season is I think it honestly is a much better season than the first season. I think if were really unhappy with the first season, I think you'll be much more happy with the second season, because it goes and actually attempts to rely on the story arcs, rely on the storylines of Devil May Cry as itself. Yes, they changed things with Virgil's character. Yes, they changed things with, you know, Mundus, and they have to change things to make it a TV series. And I think as a formula, as a series, I think this is a much better way to tell the Devil May Cry series that should have been done in the first place. And therefore, I think the aesthetics, I think the fact that, you know, they at least attempt to course correct, I think it works. And I think the characters are really fun. I think the idea of like watching how everything kind of twist and turns, and how the ideas of, like, you know, Dante and Virgil's mother, and the idea of Dante and Virgil themselves, how they are kind of, you know, on both different sides of the spectrum, and how they kind of have to work together. It leads to some really interesting ideas that I think really worked in the video game series, and I think work here. But there are things that are still problematic. I still think Dante's a little too funny. There are some things that happen in here with a young girl who I think is just completely out of place. I think, you know, it because it's only 8 episodes, I think it has to speed along pretty quickly. But like Invincible, I think the potency of the actual source material really works, to be fairly honest. And I think it really does a nice job of like leaning into certain things, leaning into certain ideas of what Devil May Cry and what makes it work. You know, the Jester and Arkham and, you know, once again, Mundus and, you know, Arias and so on and so forth. And Lady and her kind of having to deal with the situations between both sides and how she has to place her allegiance and stuff like that. And it just, there's a lot of stuff here that really just kind of helps it along. And the action's great. And the music, for my taste, is great because they use like Korn Freak on a Leash, which was awesome. And it leads into some back history. And it leads, you know, the opening episode is not the greatest, and some of the stuff at the end is not the greatest. And it leads into a very predictable ending in a lot of respects. But I think in the end, you know, not to make this review that long, I think it just really attempts to correct what people thought once went wrong. And I think this is just a much better season. Whether people agree with me or not, I don't know at this point, because people have a tendency to really want to go a different direction. Want to see their direction and what the creators are putting out there. It happens every single time when it comes to well-beloved franchises like Devil May Cry, which is a very popular video game series. And I think the certain things with Lady and Dante that play out may not make people happy or may make people happy. I don't know. It's hard to judge, you know, this series when it comes to what happened after the last season. So I will go off and say I liked it. I thought it was well produced. It's well directed. It has fun moments. It has a very energetic style of action. It's very anime in a lot of respects. And I think it hits the great tones, the great beats of what at least season 1 was attempting to do that may work here. You know, it is no longer constrained by having to tell origin tales. It's more focused on kind of going into the lore of Devil May Cry. So overall, to kind of complete this review, I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. That 0.5 taken off just because I think there's some issues with some of the episodes and stuff like that. But I think this is a really wonderful season of Devil May Cry. I keep saying Daredevil because I don't know why, but Devil May Cry season 2 I think is great. Hopefully you guys will like it. I don't know, but that's kind of where I roll. But that's my take on Netflix's Devil May Cry season 2. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching. In the comments below, when you watch this, did you like it overall? If you didn't, tell me why. I'd be happy to hear why. But with that said, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell at the top, find out what's coming next, and yeah. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.